Hello, this is Michael Kanadas with the Grovian Doll Museum and Carmel Doll Shop. It's a very special day today here because we are celebrating the 60th birthday of Barbara Millicent Roberts. And to make this day extra, extra special, we happen to have Barbie's best friend, Bradley Justice. Those of you who do not know Bradley, Bradley is one of the leading researchers on all things Mattel and all things Barbie. He has won the coveted Barbie's Best Friend Award. He's also been, for us, David and myself, he was our editor of Modern Dolls with United Federation of Doll Clubs, Doll News. He's an all-around great guy. He's here today to share his knowledge with all of you on Barbie. So, Bradley, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Michael. I'm very excited to be here. I've always dreamed of coming, and this is like a dream come true because this is kind of like a little slice of heaven here.
Well, thank you. But Barbie is, a lot of people don't realize this, she is a California girl.
She is the California girl.
California girl.
Yeah, she's...
So you have talked about Barbie all over the country this last year because of her birthday.
Yes.
But the end game is
here I am in California.
So where do you want to start? We pulled out all our Barbie things.
Why not start in the beginning with the creme de la creme of #1 Barbies. This is a fabulous #1 Barbie. It just recently appeared on the cover of Antique Doll Collector magazine. And not only is she a #1 Barbie, but she is one of the earliest #1s because she is actually hand-painted. The earliest dolls, when they went into production, the faces were completely hand-painted. So she is a premier example of that doll. She's fantastic.
How many of those have you seen in your career?
Maybe a dozen, but none of them ever as perfect and pristine as that one. That doll looks exactly the way she did when she was bought in the toy store in 1959.
So why did they stop painting them by hand? What was the reason for that?
I think the time, and I think the number of employees. There was a certain level of perfection that had to be. They had to look consistent. They had to look alike.
For the buyers.
For the buyers. And so what they did is they went to a stencil. So they had like a little metal mask that went over her face and very quickly could be airbrushed.
So here's our #2. So would this be that stencil?
That is stenciled. So it's a metal mask. The shape of all of the features is cut into it. And then it's just spray painted on. So you have, it's done much more quickly than the hand painted. So
when Bradley, what was the reception for Barbie when she first came out in 1959?
I think little girls went crazy for her. The toy buyers had reacted not so favorably, and I don't think they purchased probably the quantity that they should have, and some didn't even purchase it at all. I don't think Sears, Barbie was not in the Sears catalog in 1959.
Oh, that was a big boo-boo. Yeah, that was big.
I think someone lost their job over
one
that.
One of our very good friends, Paula, who will probably be watching this, she wanted Barbie, and her mother wouldn't spend the $3.
Right.
And she bought an imitation Barbie, and on Christmas Day, Paula opened up the package, and she saw it, and she threw it across the room and said, "That's not Barbie."
Well,
so she was disappointed.
Yes, there were probably a lot of little girls disappointed on Christmas morning because it was kind of a coveted and hard to find item come December 1959. But Mattel did something that a lot of toy companies were just starting to do then. They went directly to the little kids to educate them as to what they wanted, and that was the television. So they ran
Mickey Mouse Club.
The Mickey Mouse Club and Saturday morning cartoons. So Mattel heavily advertised, and little girls went to the toy store asking for Barbie. And so when those toy stores suddenly discovered they needed to have Barbie, Mattel was flooded with orders. They spent 4 years trying to catch up.
Wow.
With those orders.
So 4 years, that would put them into what?
63.
63.
Roughly 63.
Okay.
And so that was, that sealed the deal for Barbie's success.
And then all of the goodies.
All of the goodies. Now, that's my favorite part.
Bradley has done a lot of incredible research with the survivors of the whole Barbie project.
Right.
So you have some insight that really very few researchers have.
I've interviewed several former Mattel designers. I've interviewed sample makers. I've interviewed people that ran factories in the Orient, China, Japan, the Philippines, and Hong Kong. So I've talked to a lot of people.
And you
that were
have their
there.
insight.
Yeah, I have their insight and some of the things that they saw, that they experienced, and it's just a different world than it is now. So it's really kind of interesting to kind of know how some of this came to be and why it came to be.
So tell us a little bit about how did they even get this concept of Barbie? Where did it come from?
Ruth Handler, who was the co-founder of Mattel, watched her daughter Barbara, Barbie's namesake, play with paper dolls, and she played with them with her friends by the hours, and they were adult-themed paper dolls as far as they were grown up with fashionable wardrobes and that sort of thing. And she thought that it would be a great thing to three-dimensionalize this paper doll and have a doll with wardrobe and all the accoutrements. So she went to all the people at Mattel and said, here's my idea. No one really thought that was a good idea. They kind of thought it was crazy. And they didn't think it would sell. They didn't think people would buy it. They had seen other dolls in the market that were sort of grown-up sort of dolls like Miss Revlon, and it had kind of run its course. And so they thought that market was dead, and they didn't really see a need to break into that market. But she persevered. She insisted that they do this. And then when they were on a vacation in 1956, they went to Switzerland, and they were standing outside of a shop, and they looked into a window, and they saw this little lady. Now, she probably looks a lot like Barbie, but I assure you that is not Barbie. That doll's name is Lily. And she is based on a cartoon that appeared in a magazine in Germany called Yarbrough. And she was a racy sort of individual who kind of used her looks and her female attributes.
Let's just say she was a call girl.
Well, I like to think of her more as a gold digger. I don't know if money ever changed hands, but she always got what she wanted.
Yeah, she would go out with a gentleman, and he might buy her a nice present.
Yeah. I think that's a nice way of putting it. But she bought that doll, and she actually bought it for her daughter, thinking her daughter would display it in her room. And they ended up in another city, and they found another shop that was selling the same dolls. Well, Barbara saw another doll that she liked better, so she wanted that doll, but she liked the outfit that was on another doll. So Ruth said, "Can we buy this doll wearing this outfit?" And the salespeople were kind of like, probably, "You silly American, no." And so she bought both of the dolls, and she kind of figured that would be a good project. And so she came home with 3 or 4 of those dolls, and she dropped them in Jack Ryan's briefcase. Now, Jack Ryan sounds like something out of a Tom Clancy novel, but he was a designer and engineer that worked for Mattel. And he was given the doll by Ruth Handler and said, take this to Japan and see if you can get this turned into what we're wanting to do. And so he kind of took that project. And
now, did he sculpt it, or did he just manage the project?
He more or less managed the product. He's the it's his name on the patent for the Barbie. So he kind of engineered it. And then he and another gentleman named Frank Nakamura were in Japan to work with a company called Kokusai Boeki, which is the manufacturer that Mattel used.
Say that again.
Kokusai Boeki.
Okay.
To manage the product, that they are the ones that actually produce the doll. We always like to think that Mattel had this huge factory or whatever. Well, Mattel would find factories.
They were small.
Yeah, they were small. They were actually a pretty big company, but they knew where to go to have things manufactured. So
it wasn't necessarily their machinery or no.
So they didn't go over and build a factory to make Barbie. There was a factory already intact that worked in vinyl. Now the original dolls are all entirely vinyl. They're rotationally cast vinyl. There are some videos you could probably watch on YouTube as to how that happens, and it's pretty
fascinating.
Very fascinating. And so her torso is vinyl. The later dolls have a blow molded torso, so it's a little bit different. So these early dolls are actually solid vinyl. They're heavy. They have a heft to them. And they just kind of pop together. So this is the first time that they used that gauge of saran in doll hair. So, I mean, there were a lot of firsts for this. Mattel had never done a project like this, and Kokusai Boeki had never done a project like this. So together it was sort of like the learning curve. The earliest dolls that they were doing, there was a big defect rate. The fingers in the mold would not fill up with vinyl. There would be air bubbles. The pieces would warp. So there was a lot of defect. So
is that why we see some Barbies today with kind of warped legs?
Well,
or is that just from storage?
That could be from storage, but you know, it could have started out a little bit that way. So, but they were wanting to turn out a perfect product. So they worked really hard to make sure it was absolutely perfection. But the Barbie was perfect, but for me, the thing that is absolutely perfection is her wardrobe.
Of course, absolutely.
She would be nothing without the wardrobe.
And who's the mastermind of the wardrobe?
The original designer that Mattel hired was a lady by the name of Charlotte Johnson. And Charlotte was from Omaha, Nebraska. She had designed in New York, but her career started in Kansas City. She actually got her start there in the garment district there. And a lot of people don't know that Kansas City was a huge garment center in the 30s, 40s, and 50s.
As was Los Angeles.
Absolutely. They were number 3 behind Los Angeles. So I think at the time, I think it was like 1 in 12 dresses that American women were wearing at the time came from Kansas City.
Really? I did not know that.
So she got her start there with a brand that was just starting out called the Gay Gibson, which is a line that lasted into the 70s. So if you remember the Gay Gibson advertisements, Charlotte Johnson was one of the first designers.
Wow. Okay, so show us some of Charlotte Johnson's.
Well, this is one of her original designs that came out in 1959. This is called Easter Parade.
It doesn't look very Eastery to me.
No, it doesn't. It's very sort of somber, in my opinion. It's a black taffeta coat with a black hat. But there is a lady by the name of Fumiko Miyazuka, and she was Charlotte's assistant in Japan. When Charlotte went to Japan to set this up, Fumiko was presented to her as a girl that could sew. So she worked with Charlotte extensively. That coat was originally to have been white taffeta.
Oh, really?
It was originally to be white, but they decided that would soil too quickly. So they went with the black. So,
and isn't this, am I wrong that this is only made in 1959?
Only made in 1959. And, you know, it could have been the fact of cost. It could have been the difficulty of construction, or just
the coat is silk, isn't it?
It is. It's a silk taffeta.
So that might have been cost.
Yes.
What was the cost? I mean, we know that we have a lot of things in package with original price tags, which they're usually about $3.
Mm-hmm.
So what was the actual cost for Mattel to? Do you have any idea to produce?
They allowed approximately 11 to 17 cents for materials to produce these outfits.
Wow.
So, I mean, it sounds like pennies, but, you know, it's a small amount of fabric. And
well, and then if you really know how to lay it out when you're cutting it.
That was Charlotte's genius. Charlotte, I literally have dissected every single garment from 1959 with the exception of that coat. I've taken it apart. They're not in great condition when I do that. Taken them apart to see how these pattern pieces worked, how they went together. And it's not like making a dress for a person. It's very different. And the fact that she approached that as a women's wear designer and was able to create a garment for a doll that could be mass produced for a $3 retail is pretty amazing. But there's an elimination of side seams. A lot of the dresses have no side seams. The sleeves are set in upside down. If you look at the little jacket for commuter set, you see the seam for the sleeve is on top. So the shoulder seam and the sleeve seam is sewn all at one time, and there's no side seam.
Well, there's certainly lint on it. Barbie's going to take care of her wardrobe a little better. How
That might be my
embarrassing.
hair falling out, but you see that it's,
So she eliminated bulk for this little 11-inch.
right.
Doll.
She eliminated the bulk and ease of production. Do you know how many pattern pieces are in this jacket?
So let's see. There's one. Isn't it 4?
Well, there's actually 4 pieces of fabric, sleeve, side, side.
Oh yeah.
However,
there's no. I see. You don't get that at first.
so there's only 2 pattern pieces.
Yes. Oh, that's genius.
This is all one
Of course,
side and then
this
sleeve.
is- I don't know where this came.
It probably came off of me. But it's pretty smart.
So she's eliminated the bulk. She's also saved labor
right.
and material because
Exactly.
every extra seam is
Cost.
money.
It's money. Now, the interesting thing with these is when they were cut out, you would like to think that somebody sat there with a pair of scissors and cut everything out. What they did is they created a die, a metal die that looked like a cookie
And they
cutter.
punch it out.
And they just laid it down, and a hydraulic press came down on it, and they were all cut out. They
And
were all
that's
the
why
same size.
we don't have Barbie clothes that they always fit
They
Barbie.
always fit.
Yes.
3 millimeter seam, so everything is perfection.
Now the labeling was done right from the beginning. wasn't it?
Labeling was done right from the beginning because they wanted that brand recognition. Now, do you know why this label is a little different than some of the others that you'll
No,
see?
tell me.
Well, when Barbie first came out, she was trademarked. And then a year later, she was a registered trademark. So the earliest fashions from 1959 and 1960 will have this little TM.
TM. Okay.
The later ones will have the R in a circle. And so that way you can kind of tell the earlier ones.
Because some of the fashions went on for quite a few years.
Yes. Commuter set went for a couple of years, but like Evening Splendor went from 59 until 62. It was replaced in 63 with the gold version that was called Golden Elegance or Golden Evening.
that's one of my favorite looks for Barbie. And there you can see we have another commuter set because evidently, we
love it.
We love it. So we have one for display and one to show. One of my favorites is the little dotted Swiss Southern Belle
Plantation Belle.
plantation bell. And I just think that that's beautifully made. And there's to sew the soutache onto that dotted Swiss, that was a big job.
That was a big job. Now, this is made out of flock dotted nylon. And that,
But I still want to call it dotted Swiss.
well, and that's fine. But what I'll tell you is we think, oh, it's nylon. But if you think 1959, nylon was a big deal.
it was a big deal.
It was and it was probably more expensive than silk.
Sure.
And so the fact that she got this like frothy, nylon dress with all of this lace, it was just really kind of
And that
amazing.
is, even if it is nylon lace, that's a lot of material.
It's a lot of lace, and it's really just there was a lot of work that went to it. Everyone likes to think this is mass production and this is cheap and there was a lot of handwork that went into this, and there was a lot of pride in that handwork. The Japanese that worked on this project just understood the importance
of perfection.
of perfection.
And all the little details of, but I actually getting these girls dressed, which is a big job. I worked on some patients doing that. When I was looking at these gowns or dresses, they're actually very simple. I mean, way more simple than I ever imagined.
Simple, but it's one of those things that it's kind of like an illusion. You look at it and it looks like this fabulous lacy gown, but it's truly a circle and the bodice. And we had a conversation about how fabulous and fitted the bodice is. But if you look up close at the bodice, there's no dart in that dress. And for someone as busty as Barbie, she needs a few darts. However, the way that it's cut, there's a little bit of bias there, so it lays perfectly across her torso. So it's pretty amazing.
Now, did Charlotte Johnson also design all the accessories, the bags and hats? And
Everything for that first year they designed. And Ruth Handler's instructions to Charlotte was that she was not designing doll clothes. She was designing miniature fashion. So she was looking at the fashion magazines. She was looking at what people were wearing. And so she was working to replicate that in a miniature scale. And this is 1/6 scale.
And do you think that Hollywood had an influence on her designs?
Well, according to some rumors, she designed a lot of things for people in Hollywood. She had a boutique in Beverly Hills.
All right, so she was
did
at the
custom
epicenter.
clothing. She was. She absolutely was. So she was moving and shaking where all of the movers and shakers were.
Now, can you tell our audience, so we have a number 1 Barbie, we have a number 2 Barbie, and then we should have a number 3 or 4, but I'm not the greatest at telling which ones are which.
Right. Now, this is a number 3.
Which is one of my favorites.
And the first 3 dolls turn a little pale. Some of them turn ghastly white, but they're paler. And your 3s are the only dolls that there can be a variation that has the brown eyeliner, which I absolutely love.
Yeah, I love that too.
So that's a 3. And then this wearing Suburban Shopper is a number 4.
And the Suburban Shopper, that's another one that's really a genius of design, where they've worked with the fabric and then the cut with the seam, creating that, just one dart down the center.
And the fabric was originally a shirting. So, she had to source all this fabric. And the thing that I say with the sunglasses and the phone, none of this existed before. We always think with dolls that you would just say we need shoes for a 14-inch doll, run across to the doll shoemaker. Well, none of this existed. So it all had to come up. And this purse and this hat both have kind of a fun story. They were trying to figure out a hat, and they were looking for inspiration in how to make it. And they were served lunch. They were staying at the Imperial Hotel in Japan. So they brought in this tray of lunch. And in Japan, one of the standards with any meal is your rice. So the rice was served in a bowl that had a lid. The lid is shaped exactly like that hat.
Oh, how wonderful.
So they took a little bit of that straw material, put it over the lid, and made that prototype for the hat.
So did it have that weave, or it was just the shape?
It was just had the shape.
Just the shape.
Just the shape. And then the purse, Famiko, her assistant, they were trying to come up with an idea for a purse, and everything they were doing was too expensive. So a little bit of that same straw and some cardboard, and she sat down and made that purse very quickly. And as far as cost, you've got that straw cloth, which was very inexpensive, and the cardboard, which was practically free. And so you had a wonderful, wonderful purse that was just,
And then they could repackage it, change it slightly, and then they'd have a little extra.
Exactly.
Extra,
with
which,
the flowers.
80 cents was not no money then.
That's true.
That was a consideration.
Yeah, that was probably 2 or 3 weeks allowance for some kids.
So how long did Charlotte Johnson work in designing Barbie's clothes?
Well, she pretty much designed the first collection, and then they saw
Once they had the tiger by the tail.
Once they had the tiger by the tail, they let her be the manager of this department, and they hired 3 more designers. Some of the designers that came after that were Kate Carter, Dorothy Shue, and Ella Hall Brown. They were hired, so Charlotte managed them. So she would oversee that. I think she probably still designed a few things. She still created some stuff, but for the most part, she was the manager of the department, and she would travel to Japan to help set up the production each time they created a new collection.
Do we know who created these iconic looks?
Yes. Well, the Solo in the Spotlight, which is probably one of the most recognizable Barbie dresses.
Well, it's gorgeous, that's why.
It's just stunning. It's stunning. Was designed by Ella Hall Brown. And she had originally designed it in sort of a black crepe fabric with little rhinestone straps. But of course, the rhinestones were probably too expensive, and they wanted it to have a little glitz. So they found this knit fabric that has this sort of glitter weaved into it. And so they created that. So you throw in a microphone and that pink scarf.
And I would imagine the material was not that expensive, but it's what they did with it.
You know, that's the thing. It's kind of like, you know, taking something so simplistic yet making it amazing, which is pretty much that. And it's a knit, so it's stretchy, so there's not a lot of fit that has to go into that.
And I guess that in that same year, Barbie could be a nightclub singer and a nurse.
Absolutely, you know?
a nurse by day, a nightclub singer by night.
You know, hey, you gotta pick up a little extra money here and there. So now this is called Enchanted Evening, and to me, it's probably the most Hollywood of Hollywood outfits that Barbie has.
Absolutely.
There's a portrait of Grace Kelly wearing sort of a seafoam green version of this. And I love this. And this was designed by a lady named Kay Carter. Now, Kay Carter may not be a name that you recognize, but she was actually a designer that worked in Hollywood. She has a couple movie credits, and she worked with the famous Hollywood costumer Irene. Now, Irene was Irene Lentz, and she replaced Adrienne at MGM.
And did some of the most beautiful clothes that were ever made.
She did some amazing clothes, and she would costume Midnight Lace with Doris Day. And she was a big...
We love Doris Day here in the Monterey Peninsula.
Yes, we do.
Yes, we do. Her hometown.
She was a big confidant of Doris Day. Now, Kay was working at Mattel. Irene had been hired by Bullock's to design a collection. Bullock's department store in California. Well, Irene had a few issues, and so she checked herself into the Knickerbocker Hotel, and she took an overdose of sleeping pills and drank herself to sleep. Well, when that didn't work, and she woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning, she wrote a letter of apology to the guests at the Knickerbocker Hotel, and she threw herself out the window and met her untimely fate, which is very sad. However,
she was a great
designer.
artist.
But this plays into the world of Barbie. Because she was gone, they were like, we've got to find someone to finish this collection and bring it to market. So they called her former assistant, Kay Carter, that was working for Mattel on Barbie, and they pulled her away from Barbie. So she came back and finished the collection that Irene had started, and it met with great fanfare in the press. And so this is one of the final things that she created for Barbie.
But it's very Hollywood.
Oh, it's completely Hollywood.
I see what you mean, the Grace Kelly, the front part, but this train that kind of comes forward is very much A Star is Born with Judy Garland.
Yes.
The scene where she wins the Oscar. And
Absolutely.
The train is in the front. And that makes sense because Barbie's a California girl.
She is absolutely a California girl. And
but what I love about the clothing is that the taste level to me is so perfect. Like, for instance, this strapless piece. You could see this on a runway today, or you could see it on Rachel Hoffman. It's just a fabulous
I would
look.
love to see that on Rachel Hoffman. I think you can they've actually done some human-sized versions of some of these. So we may have to have that drop ship to Denver.
But I love the belt with the matching bag and then the shoes. The only thing I have against Barbie is these shoes, as tiny as they are, they can bounce like 6 or 8 feet.
When you drop them, it's the chance you may never see them again.
And I always drop a shoe that's the color of the carpet. So then that makes it really a lot of fun. Now, the extra products, it seems to me, I use a lot of the original booklets, but it seems to me that there are more extra products than there are in booklets. Is that true?
There are a lot of things that were produced that never showed up in the booklets.
Yes.
There's a few outfits and then gift sets and stuff that were
I love gift sets.
I do too.
Yeah.
You have one you want to send to me? Fine with
Send
that.
it to me. He's got lots. I'm poor with Barbie. I'm
But
poor.
there was also, and I love the booklets because
They had to have it in staff art direction to do this work.
absolutely.
Because it's so high fashion.
One of their, trying to think of her name, Cynthia Lawrence did a lot of illustrations for them, and she did a lot of the storyboards. She worked for Carson Roberts' advertising agency, and so she created a lot of the look of how the dolls were going to be. She illustrated some of the Random House books. So I mean, for me, Michael, whenever I'm in a bad mood, I can just sit down on the sofa and thumb through one of these magazines, and it just sort of changes my whole perspective.
It just makes you want to have everything.
Absolutely.
Now, shall we go into so we've done one, we've done two. Well, we didn't talk about the number two, one of my favorite outfits.
Gay Parisienne.
Gay Parisienne.
Now, in 1957, 58, there were a lot of designers in Paris and Italy that did the bubble dress. Balenciaga, Roberto Capucci. And it was a very fashionable thing. So Charlotte created this dress for Barbie. The story was that she was staying at the Imperial Hotel and an Italian movie star came in and she was wearing a bubble dress. And that was the inspiration. Charlotte liked dots, so not a surprise that it's polka dotted.
Oh, yeah, well, which are always can be very cute or can be very chic.
And I think it's both. And this is an amazing dress. And as the zipper in the back, it's very fitted and
but it was only 1 year.
1 year.
And do we know why?
I don't think we know why, but one of my things is some things that are fashionable are as quickly out of fashion as they're
That's
in
true.
fashion.
That's
So
true.
that look kind of changed very quickly. So that's a little bit of my opinion that maybe it kind of changed. It's a kind of a complicated dress to put together. That's one that I have disassembled and I've remade it just to see the process. And it's a little bit complicated.
And that may be the reason.
Yeah. So
That would cut into the cost.
absolutely.
And then, isn't this Roman Holiday?
Roman Holiday, another outfit that was only available in 1959. And that one comes with the very rare, very unusual accessory, the little brass compact that has the initial B on the top of it for Barbie. And
we almost never find those.
never find that. They turn up, and usually they're hundreds, if not thousands of dollars.
I think the little girls ate them. Because they had to have, because
And
where would they go?
I've always told myself that there are some things that I just won't pay big bucks for, and that's been one of them. I actually have half of one.
Well, hey, there you go.
Half
But
of
you'll
one's better
get-
than
you'll-
$100.
you'll
It'll
get
turn up in the back of a case or in a purse one day, so that'll be a treasure.
And the
note.
thing about Barbie is I play with our Barbies. So I was putting them together with the booklets, and I was getting myself all stressed because I was missing a little charm bracelet. And then I realized that this Barbie was wearing it.
Mhm.
So, I think that kids still love to mix and match.
It's amazing the scale, and even with men, I find that when men are looking at some of the exhibits that I've done, I think they're more impressed with it than sometimes the ladies, just from the fact that it's miniature and it's that scale.
Tiny.
It's
Yeah,
tiny.
it's tiny.
I think it's
And it's a good place for me to get calmed down because you have to be very patient to dress a Barbie for
do.
these big
I know
fingers.
that. Welcome to my world.
So one of my personal favorites, because I have a lot of nostalgia with them, is and by the way, when I say this, I don't know that much about Barbie, but I happen to have been there, so I have kind of a feeling.
Right.
But one of my favorites is the swirl because it reminds me of
Right.
so many people that I knew
Right.
at the time. So when did Swirl come out?
Swirl comes out in 1964, and I know a little story about that.
This is a swirl.
Barbie needed a new hairdresser, and so a lady by the name of Jean Berger was hired. And they asked her on her first day to come up with a new updated ponytail. So very quickly she went in and she rooted ahead and styled it. And on that day, the swirl was born. So that is the first hair design that Jean Berger did for Barbie.
Wow.
She would work from until up to about 1980.
This is live. So the UPS man is here, and he's probably here with Barbie's dress. So we'll be right back. We are so sorry to cut that short, but we had to take that door knock because it was Barbie's special dress that she's going to wear at her birthday party.
I'm very excited about that dress.
So, just because she's 60 years old doesn't mean that she doesn't need a new dress. So
I
she's
agree
going to
with
get
that.
a new dress for her party.
That's very
So where
exciting.
we were talking about swirls.
We're talking about the swirl, and Jean Berger, Barbie's hairdresser that created that. She would work for Mattel from 64 to probably about 1980, and she designed some of the iconic hairstyles, especially in the late 60s for Barbie and the Kittles. And you were telling me you like Kittles.
I love Kittles.
So she did a lot of those crazy hairstyles.
It's one of my don't tell anybody I like Kittles. It's one of my secrets.
I love the secret. I won't tell anybody, I promise.
And I wish there were more variations of hair color for swirl.
Well, I see you have the Titian, which is
Yes.
the redhead, the brunette, and the blonde. There's an ash blonde, but you're
Is
missing.
there an ash
There's an
blonde?
ash blonde, but you're also missing, and I can't believe that you don't have it. They made it in platinum, and the platinum came with pale pink lipstick that usually fades over time to sort of a pale white color. So you're going to have a platinum.
Well,
for the
I'm going to
collection.
have to tell you something that you don't know about platinum. Our first employee that we ever had, which was Anita Starr, who just passed away at 103.
Oh my goodness.
She was the first platinum blonde. She was the first person that ever had her, in New York City, her hair dyed platinum.
Well, I love that.
Yes. So now I have to have,
You have to have a platinum swirl and an ash blonde.
oh my God, I feel so inadequate.
You know, the good thing about Barbie is it's out there. They've made a few. So,
They made a few,
Yeah,
yes.
so that's
Yes.
you can always. They're kind of like taxi cabs. If you miss one, just wait a little bit.
That's true.
Come
And
along.
I'm very patient. So I love this little number.
That's called Dinner at 8.
And it's just, it's not my favorite color, but I love the whole design. And again, it's just so simple.
It's
When you-
simple, but it's you always think of those like 1960s television shows, and this is what they would have relaxed in the evening. It was sort of this hostessy sort of ensemble, and it's a taffeta jumpsuit that's strapless, and this wonderful orange overcoat. And the thing that's really cool are these great cork wedge heels with
they're
the gold
fabulous.
straps.
Now, those, when they fall off, those are easy to find because
Yeah.
you've got the
But those
gold.
those black open toe heels are just gone.
This is one of my favorites that we have. And my first cousin had this, and I was so envious that she had this with all these wigs.
That was
And-
really a great thing.
Yes, and I think that. Do you think that they might have learned to do the wigs from the Barbie fan club where they would talk about messing the dolls' hairs up
That's
and changing it?
one of the things in the earliest fan club magazines that they talked about was little girls were writing letters saying, my Barbie's hair is messed up. And they would reply with, well, don't brush it. It's not hair.
Yeah, and please, people, don't brush your
Yeah,
ponytails.
So I think that they started looking for alternative hairstyles. So the bubble cut came along, short and bouffant, and so that there was no real upkeep to that. Now this, if you think back to the 60s, everybody was wearing wigs. Wigs were
Absolutely.
huge.
Absolutely.
And so the whole idea of a doll with wigs that you
It
can
was
have
like mom did, or your older sister.
Absolutely. So you had this side part flip in Titian, and this is bubble on bubble in the blonde, and then this is a brunette page boy. Barbie's hair is sculpted, and it's under this turban, and it comes on the wigs. The wigs just pop right on.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of just a wonderful thing that I mean, I have a theory that why it was never played with is this is about the time people started to really collect dolls.
Yes.
So a lot of people were collecting dolls rather than a plaything to.
Right.
To
Now, I'm going to show you my favorite part about this box.
Yeah, isn't that fabulous?
This illustration is just amazing.
I mean, you can just see her looking at, I know I'm gorgeous. Doesn't matter which wig I put on, I'm gorgeous.
Blonde, brunette, or redhead, I am fabulous.
Yes.
But
And see, this is what I love is all of the
The
illustrations.
art and the illustration, it's so timely. It is so of the moment. And I just absolutely love these illustrations.
And shall we look at mid-60s fashions?
Well, the mid-60s, one of the things that happened is fashion changes. Barbie's wardrobe was constantly updated. It's sort of like a timeline of fashion history when you look at it. So this is another ensemble that was designed by Kay Carter. It's called Career Girl, and it's just a salt and pepper tweed suit. And I mean, that's just, to me, it's so chic. It's so fabulous, and then that fabulous hat. So it just
And you could really do with Barbie a whole study on hats, the history of hats and the names, you know, the cartwheels, the peach basket. I mean,
Yes.
she's got all of it.
absolutely. And they went for fashion, but they didn't go for fad.
Right.
They wanted it to be an accepted fashion so children would understand it. You know, fads came and went really quickly, even then, more so now. But, you know, they wanted to make sure that kids would understand and it would have a shelf life. It would have longevity, that children would play with it. Now, every little girl dreamed about being a cheerleader, and you've got Midge wearing the cheerleading outfit, which was designed by Dorothy Shue. Now, Dorothy Shue had worked at Mattel. She had come from sort of an interesting background. She had designed ready-to-wear and dresses, but she also worked for somebody you might have heard of. Have you ever heard of Sid and Marty Krofft?
Yes.
Yeah, they did all those crazy TV shows in the 60s and 70s, but before that they did a marionette theater. I think it was in San Francisco.
Yes.
Les Poupées de Paris. It ended up at the World's Fair. She worked for them designing costumes for the puppets.
Now, the M on, does that stand for the school, correct?
No, it stands for Mattel.
Does it? Oh, duh. Yeah,
Well, it's
thanks.
interesting because Ken
Team
in
Mattel.
Team Mattel. Ken in 1961 gets an outfit called Campus Hero, and it comes with a
I think
U
we
for
have one somewhere.
U for university, and
I think we have one packaged somewhere here. Or maybe I think I wanted one. I don't know that I have. Well,
and there's
maybe not.
still this day is young. Maybe we'll have it before the end of the day. But it had a U, and then they did that outfit for several years, and I think it was the next year came out with the M.
So what year did Midge come out?
Midge came out in 1963.
Okay, so that's just adding a little variety.
Well, I think it was adding a little bit of play value. I think Mattel's idea was they were thinking that maybe Barbie was so glamorous that little girls couldn't relate to her. So they wanted to design a doll that kids could relate to. So there would be this sort of like in-between person for the child and Barbie.
I would never go for the in-between.
I don't think little girls needed that Midge. They wanted the glamour.
Yeah, yes.
They wanted the glamour.
And then let's talk about the man in her life.
G.I. Joe.
Yeah, well, these are our G.I. Joes, mine and David's. So
really?
I always played with G.I. Joe and Barbie together.
Well, everybody
Always.
loves a man in uniform.
Yeah. But I mean, the real man and her constant
That would be
friend,
Ken.
Ken. So
Ken. This is the 1961 Ken. He's got that fuzzy hair. And he's named after Ruth Handler and Elliot Handler's son, Kenneth. But they were just adding play value. Barbie had a boyfriend, so now they could go on dates and do all
have
kinds of
weddings
stuff.
and things.
Exactly.
Now, do you know who worked on the clothes for Ken? Because they are incredible.
They're pretty amazing.
They are amazing.
The Ken clothes are pretty much just your clothes and my clothes shrank down. for
Yeah,
a 12-inch
absolutely.
doll. They're really amazing. Now, ironically, they didn't just bring someone in and say, you're the Ken designer. The designers that were working for them, they just said,
Do the menswear. And that makes sense.
Exactly.
Because they're probably also, I mean, if you look at it, probably that fabric and this fabric is probably, well, no, that's corduroy, but maybe this one, they're
the same.
using the same. So they're,
Well, I can tell you a little bit about that. Mattel was a smart business. Ruth Handler was very smart. So when it came time to design something, and when in 1961 Dorothy Shu said, I want to do this dress with a red velvet bodice, I'm sure Charlotte was the one that said, what else are you going to do in red velvet? So then there's a coat.
which you could really actually work together, couldn't you?
Absolutely, it works fabulous together.
So this, they could buy the fabric in huge quantities and probably
But
save.
what I'll tell you is interesting is if you get the Ken Little Theater Arabian Nights, it's red velvet. Skipper gets an outfit very similar to that with red velvet. There's an outfit called Benefit Performance that was red velvet. Chatty Cathy got an outfit in red velvet.
Everybody gets red
got red velvet. So they bought it in bulk, and then it was across the line that they spread
And
it out.
they spread it out, so you don't
Absolutely.
notice that it's all red velvet.
Exactly. So, and they would match it up with different things, so everything kind of looked different. So you don't really notice that, but that was a way that they could really get a better price on the fabric. But it's interesting how you know when you start paying attention, the white satin is the same white satin as the wedding gown, which is also the same white satin as the pack pieces that they did in 1863. So they were just being savvy.
I have a question for you. I love these little sets like this.
Yes.
And these little cat eye glasses with the glitter. Did they ever have that with an ensemble put together as part of it?
No.
No.
It only came in pack sets. It came with this set, and it came with some of the pack knit sets that they did in 1963. But I don't think it ever came with a.
And we've got two conflicting prices. We have $1.84.
Inwoods. That must be local. I've never heard of them.
I haven't either. It's not but I love these little doodads.
The sunglasses were produced in Japan by a company that produced celluloid items.
Oh, really?
So they were.
But they're not celluloid.
They're not celluloid.
No. I know because I stepped on a pair the other day and they did not break. So, if they were celluloid, they would have broken. Yeah. And these shoes, did these go in another set?
They came with a lot of sets, inclling like Enchanted Evening.
With the glitter on?
With the glitter.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I guess they did.
So.
Yeah, it's easy to forget.
Those are hard to find.
Yeah. And I love the little gloves and how that works.
The gloves are just
and then this is
genius.
the same, isn't this the same necklace,
As Enchanted Evening?
I would never, ever consider opening this because wouldn't you say that as minute I touched that, it would fall apart?
That necklace, if you breathe wrong on that necklace, it's going to fall apart. Yeah. I've had it one time perfect, and I was too chicken to even put it on the doll because it's got this very, very fine wire, and it just shatters.
I want to ask you about green ears.
Yes.
So I've never seen yet a number 1 or a number 2 with green ears. Why do they not get green ears? And explain to the audience, because not everybody knows what.
Well, the green
ears.
ear comes from the earrings, and in the 60s, the post on the earrings they used was made of brass.
So you have brass corrosion.
Yeah, it's brass corrosion, and it stains the ears, and it's kind of an irreversible sort of plight. There are a lot of things people have done to clean it. I am currently working with a chemist to try and understand why it happens and is there a way of reversing it without doing significant damage to the doll. So there's a lot of things like that I've been sort of researching. The earlier dolls, the earrings they came with were not brass. They're actually made of aluminum.
Like her I don't think she's ever had those out.
She never has.
Yeah.
Those earrings are made of sort of a gold tone aluminum.
So there's no
corrosion and if it is, it's not the same color as like the brass. So, so you don't get that.
Well, that's, if I had my own childhood doll, I would, of course, keep it if it had green ears. But, it's something that bothers me to see, on a doll having the big green,
Yeah.
it's like she has gangrene on her face.
It's sad. It's sad that
It's
that
sad.
happens.
So hopefully you can discover the cure.
I would love to find the cure. The one thing I will say is if you are a Barbie collector and you have original earrings in your dolls and they haven't turned or have turned just a little bit, take them out.
Yeah.
It's just not worth it.
When we're done with this weekend, I'm going to remove those earrings because those are the original earrings with the outfit. But most of the rest of ours all have the replacements so that they're safe.
Yes.
But I couldn't resist. One of my favorite outfits, and maybe you could tell me about this one. It's not the rarest outfit, but I just think it's so elegant.
It's called Orange Blossom. That also is from, I think, 1961, 62. And it essentially is the bridesmaid dress. Midge had to have something to wear.
Oh no, Barbie would never allow Mitch to look this good. Come on.
Yeah, I'm just teasing. But it's once again, as you said, it's when you start looking at the design of it, it's very simple. It's just a strapless sheath with this pinafore, but the fabrication, the color, the styling just makes it look amazing.
And it looks like they use the same pattern for the headdress that they used for
Gay Parisienne.
Gay Parisienne.
Just in a different color.
And as playability for a child, you can use it without, just the
right. You could sort of
the dress
mix and match.
and then the over top or not.
And Mattel recycled this fabric in many ways. Skipper gets a matching dress. They also did a pink version of Skipper's dress using this fabric. So they continue to upcycle.
And then again, the wonderful illustrations. They're just
Barbie's going to Paris.
Yes, of course she is. Well, why wouldn't she? Go to the Sorbonne. Now, the automobiles.
Yes.
I love the automobiles. And so Mattel did not make these.
Mattel didn't make them, surprisingly. It was a licensed product by a company called Irwin. Irwin was a toy company that did a lot of blow-molded toys in the 50s and 60s. And so Barbie's car is not a Corvette. A lot of people say it's a Corvette. It's an Austin Healey.
Well, of course it's an Austin Healey.
Absolutely.
Everybody should know that.
Everybody should know that. But it's a fabulous car. The Austin Healey and Barbie's Austin Healey.
Oh, absolutely.
So, but it's sort of a peachy tone with the turquoise blue interior. Kind of hard to find it in good condition. The windshield and bumpers are often broken.
Well, we have one in the original box still,
which has
never been taken out.
Pretty amazing because the packaging for that box is pretty great.
And I've got it stuck underneath, but there's a centerpiece that comes down, and you can really see how it cuts out around Barbie's face. But the whole nother box lid top. And again, I love the illustrations.
His background illustrations are just incredible.
Usually the windshield is
usually cracked.
Cracked, yes. But I think that the one thing about Barbie that I think is it is wide open for collectors. There are so many opportunities.
It's affordable.
Yeah.
You can collect on whatever your budget is, and it's accessible. I sell a lot of Barbie on eBay.
And your shop is on eBay. What is it?
My seller ID on eBay is Shawstein, SHAWSTEIN. You can find my store also on Facebook on the Swell Doll Shop, and you can follow the links there. My thing has always been, as a collector, to get what I want. So whenever I'm shopping and buying the collection, I usually like to, but I love finding amazing things for my customers. I love, like you saying, well, I'm looking for this. Then it's in my mission to help you find that. So that's always
and I think that the thing about Barbie is there's, other than a few select items, there's really room for everyone to play with Barbie.
Oh, absolutely.
And she really is, in my opinion, she is a mid-century masterpiece. And, there are a lot of dolls in this building. But of all the dolls in this building, actually, Barbie is the most important because there have been more Barbies produced than all other dolls that have ever been produced.
Over a billion.
Over a billion. I mean, this is a California girl that made good.
She really did.
Yeah.
And over, I think, 160 countries she's marketed.
Everybody knows Barbie.
Yep. I agree.
And you know what? There are some Barbie haters out there, but Barbie just
Haters gonna hate.
but Barbie just keeps on doing it.
She just keeps going.
So
keeps going.
We're going to take a little bit of a pause because we're going to change the lights because we have really one of the most important Barbie artifacts that Bradley's brought to share with all of you today.
I'm very excited to share this with you.
So we'll be back in just a minute. We are back. So Bradley, you have brought something to share with us, and I think this is of great importance. Could you explain what we're looking at?
This is kind of one of the jewels in my collection. I consider this to be the prototype of Barbie, or one of the prototypes of Barbie. When Ruth Handler came back from Europe with the Build Lilies, they decided to move forward with it. Jack Ryan got in touch with sculptors, and as best I can document, between 3 and 4 sculptors were given a Build Lily and instructed on how to transform this doll into the doll that they wanted. Softening the face, making her more realistic, getting rid of the molded shoes and that sort of things. And this is the results of some of that.
Now, do you know which sculptor this belonged to?
I think that this was Cy Wood. Anthony Belloni worked on the project, Cy Wood worked on the project. And I think what they did is each one of the sculptors sculpted it and created what they wanted to do. And when it was presented to Mattel then sort of cherry-picked the best parts. I think this one's arms are pretty much the exact same arms.
I think they are.
As the number one Barbie. So I'd venture and say that this is who created the arms. Now, at the time, Mattel didn't really have sculptors in-house. If they needed something sculpted, they farmed it out.
Farmed it out for probably a very nominal fee.
Right, and it was probably better to do it that way and get the product they needed instead of hiring someone and hoping that they could achieve that. So
the face looks almost like like the number one Barbie, but perhaps they tweaked it before.
I think so, and maybe
of course it's painted so differently.
It's painted very differently. Barbie has that sort of side glance eye. This doll's eyes look straight ahead, and her eyebrows are very curved, but I don't know if you know this, but another California Hollywood sort of like aside for Barbie. Do you know who designed Barbie's original makeup?
I do not. I'd love to know.
We know that the final makeup was designed by a friend of Jack Ryan who worked for Max Factor in Hollywood, Bud Westmore, who did all kinds of Hollywood movies and celebrity makeup.
And ultimately, Barbie's famous eyes in 1959, that style is called the flick. Did you know that?
I think you told me that one time before.
Yes.
To me, it's always looked like that cover of Vogue with Dovima on the cover with the arched eyebrows and that sort of...
And actually, it's not a terribly dramatic flick. There were much more dramatic flicks.
Oh, absolutely.
But that is the name of that eye makeup. She's got the very all-American girl look.
She does. She's very much just a girl next door kind of thing.
Now the torso, it looks like she's not as busty as Barbie ultimately is.
True. This torso is a little more demure. It's not as busty. I've measured it with calipers and all kinds of things to try and figure out the differences in all of the different parts. And the torso, I'm going to say, is definitely not the torso that was finally selected for Barbie.
But this is a very important Barbie artifact.
I agree. I think it's probably,
Not replaceable at any price.
yeah, you couldn't go out and buy another one. And there's very little prototype from the earliest days of Barbie. A lot of the prototypes for the fashions and the dolls and stuff, were left in Japan.
Sure.
So
Well, she's a California girl, and we move forward. We don't hang on to the past much. Well, Bradley, thank you so much for being with us here at the Grovian, and whenever I'm in your presence, I learn so much.
Well, thank you. I am excited that I've been able to be here with you guys.
And I get to have more of Bradley because he's going to be here for a couple of days, and I'm going to pick his brain.
Absolutely.
So we know that Barbie's going to have an amazing future, and she's still going strong at 60. Now it's 60 plus, isn't it? Just
Yeah,
about 60
exactly.
plus. So what projects are you working on in the doll world to help bring more
Well,
awareness?
As you know, I love to research, and that's always been one of my passions. And so I've been working with Antique Doll Collector, and my future with them is going to be several more articles on Barbie and other contemporary dolls, and
Which are not so contemporary.
and not exactly. It is Antique Doll Collector for a reason. So I'm excited to be looking at doing a monthly column with them, and just a lot of articles.
So your monthly column, which I think is a brilliant idea, is that going to, the subscribers are going to be able to have interchange with you?
Well, that's what we're hoping, that there'll be some exchange between collectors asking questions. We're also hoping to kind of make some fun discoveries and be able to share some never before seen items, and maybe enlighten the history behind some of the items. So it'll be short, sweet, and to the point, which will be a great tidbit of history for each month. But then I'm also planning some fairly extensive, well-researched articles, so I can't wait to do this.
For Antique Doll?
Yes.
Okay. And then you, in your neck of the woods, don't you have some events coming up?
I do. May 2nd, I'm hosting a luncheon and learning opportunity. Each year I do a program in Durham, North Carolina, which is my home. And we have a luncheon, and I do a program this year. We're calling it An American Doll in Paris.
Oh, fabulous.
So it's all about how Paris couture inspired Barbie's wardrobe. So you're going to get to learn more about the designers, more about the fashions, and the couture contemporaries.
We can put a link
absolutely.
into that.
Absolutely,
so
please
that 10 people out watching this, they could go to that event and see. Barbie events are always fun.
Oh, we have a great time.
Yes. You don't even have to be a Barbie collector to go to a Barbie event and have a blast.
I have 3 of my doll club people that are not Barbie collectors at all that always come to my event and always have a great time.
It just takes one, though. Once you have one, it doesn't.
Exactly.
It doesn't take long. Well, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you
here.
for having me, Michael.
And we'll see you all, doll friends. See you later.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.